This is an old Coal Mine Colliery Lokie Bridge, and I'm going to attempt to cross it. If you want to see this and a whole lot more, all you need to do is come along with me.
I should have been.
Out on my M20 e-bike, and when I was doing my review video for this bike, I came across a few interesting locations that I want to return to and get a closer look at, including an old Coal Mine Colliery Lokie Bridge. So in just a little bit, we'll be stopping at our first location. So one of the locations I spotted was when I was on this levee. It was on the other side of the river, and when I did my video, the foliage wasn't grown in like it is now. I was able to see some ruins or structures. I was also able to look on one of my new apps I've been using to find out what exactly is over there, and I did get confirmation it was something of importance. So what we're going to do is follow the levee down to the next road crossing, cross over the river, and make our way on the other side of the shoreline and hopefully come across those ruins or structures. Once we get there, we'll hopefully find out what they are, but more importantly, I'll let you know what the area used to be. So I found access on the other side of the river, hoping this leads us to where we have to go. It's pretty much like a dense jungle now. You hear that sound? I know that sound. Which leads me to the information I was going to share. What we're riding on right now, right in front of us, right behind me, is a former rail line. I was able to confirm that on the one app I've been using to help identify old and present rail lines. Now, I can't continue any further, so I think we may have to go on foot. But yeah, we're close by, I know that. I'm gonna have to do some scouting around. It's gonna be a lot more difficult to see where everything is now that it's all grown in. But I'm not the first one here. There's a visitor waiting for me. I don't know who that is. I do recognize it, or her, but I don't know from what movie or cartoons. If you guys happen to know who that is or where they're from, feel free to comment down below. Alright, I got the bike locked up. So looking back that way, it does resemble an old rail line. This way, not so much, but this was part of the New York, Ontario, and Western Railroad, which came through here long ago. And there are different sections of the Heritage Trail that have repurposed that same rail line. Alright, I'm gonna trek through here. I'm gonna keep my eyes peeled for snakes and ticks and everything else, so once I do come upon something of importance or significance, I'll bring it back. So, do you spot anything man-made? Well, if you look close enough, there's a few things here that are standing out to me. So let's start with the closest. So we just walked this direction, and this is, I believe, the leading edge of the things I saw. So right here, first off, we do have a leaning over telegraph pole. This would have had the insulators on it for the telegraph wires. It's leaning against a piece of concrete with some rebar coming out of it. Directly across from that is a humongous wall. Those stones are, the larger ones are about the size of car engines, like a 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder engine. They're quite large. I don't think this was an abutment. I think this is a retaining wall. There's also another section over there. Here you can see it collapsed, everything fell down. So I think this is just a large retaining wall because the rail line would have been right here. Here's the end of the telegraph pole right there. It's been stripped clean, nothing on it. There was a post here of sorts. Could have been a mile marker, could have been with a W on it for a whistle, could have been a number of things, but definitely right here along the rail bed. Right here in front of the retaining wall, we have numerous ties. Now, these are not railroad ties per se. Now, they are creosote soaked timbers, but they're much larger than railroad ties. I mean, just to show you, for example, scale with my hand, it is much larger than a railroad tie, but is related to railroad history. Somebody found an old spike, placed it there. I don't know if these would have been for some type of structure here for supports, but they are stacked up here right in front of the wall. But as we do continue, there is more to see. So once I get through this thicker patch of bamboo and greenery, I'll show you what's up there. Down to right here, right along the water's edge, we do have, it's like the foundation of a building. I'm actually standing on it right now. So it was squared off here. I believe I could get down the other side. We could probably get inside of here and get a better visual of it. But this is a wall pretty much right here. The water is maybe 10 feet past it. Down inside here now, you get a better visual of the wall. There's some anchors coming out of it. Right in front of me is a decent chunk of coal. Most likely what was carried on some of the trains here. Piece of anthracite. Oh, it's covered in ants. Let's put that back down. Now, as to what this was, obviously not a clue. I mean, it's just a foundation from long ago. Discarded concrete. You can see pieces of wood and stone mixed into it, probably for structural integrity. This side, the walls are, for the most part, toppled in. And we'll see if we can get a view from the water's edge looking inward, but it is old concrete without a doubt. It's not stone. My guess is something serviced this by train, maybe also by water as well. I'd say more likely though by train. There's also more foundations there. So down here near the water's edge looking upstream. I came the right time though, because we had some significant rains the past couple weeks and this was underwater at one point. Everything is pushed over. So thankfully enough time has passed where the water levels have receded. I'm able to stand here without being up to my knees or waist in water. So here we could get a better glimpse at what is here. It's basically a large wall, goes right down to the ground. It is all poured concrete. There are stones mixed into it, like I said, I believe for structural integrity. There's rebar as well, and most likely was a squared off building here. I even see some braided cable over there as well. Yeah, mixed into the concrete. is braided cable. It's probably 1 inch, if not thicker. There's a metal bar right there. Really close to the water though. And that is basically what we rode across earlier on that levee system. Now if we continue a little bit upstream, there is a little bit more here to check out in regards to foundations. Now, again, this is just speculation without getting confirmation from maps, which I'm going to do some research to see what I can find. But this is another wall slash possibly foundation. And there may or may not be some more. Actually, let's check while we're here before I go back up top. Yeah, there's another wall here. There's concrete right here. All right, another wall. Could have been continued the whole entire way. Could have been a building on top. Could be for retaining. And it does angle around this side here. Here's the corner of it. Looks like it does end here. Rail line would be right up there on the flat surface, and in between here and there, there's just discarded pieces of concrete that's just pushed over, laying on the embankment here, as well as on the other side. If you guys have any idea what you think it could be in relation to either a building or just a retaining wall, comment down below. If you do think it's a building, tell me what you think its use could have been based on the proximity of the rail line and the river. There's also more coal right here too. We're back up on top now. We were just down there. On this side, there is more stonework. Someone carved the name Fugafino. I don't think that's original. Looks like charcoal, actually. Little tiny wall here. Maybe a post. Another wall or support for something. That's the other thing I didn't consider too, is that it could be one of three things. It could be a retaining wall of sorts, at least the wall looking items. The squared off structure could be a building. It could be the base or foundation of something that was up higher, like a support, or it could have been a dumping area for unloading coal cars maybe. Maybe they went then put onto barges down the river. Who knows? I'm just really trying to think of all possible scenarios or examples as to its use. And even if we don't find out exactly what it was, it's fun to imagine and speculate. That's part of the fun of exploring, is just imagining what used to be. And if we do get confirmation of what exactly it was, well, that's just a bonus and even better. This is the next section of the Lackawanna River Heritage Trail, which again is following New York, Ontario, and Western Railroad. It came straight through here. Here you can really get a sense of the rail bed. It's a nice long straight shot here, relatively flat. The ground is like silt. There is some old pieces of ballast. This is a true sense of a former abandoned railroad, minus the ties and the tracks. Now from here, the rail line would have continued, and we're going to go that way in just a moment. But I do want to make a detour up here because there is something I showed during my review video, but I didn't really get a really up close and personal look at it. And you can probably see it straight ahead. Here's our next location. So where we came from is just on the river's edge through the tree line there. That's where the New York, Ontario, and Western Railroad would have ran parallel to this line. Now this line is still a used line. It's owned and operated by Delaware-Lackawanna Railroad, the short line railroad here in Scranton. But this used to be Delaware and Hudson back in the day. So Delaware and Hudson operated here, New York, Ontario, and Western over there, roughly 100 yards apart. And it goes through this pretty impressive looking through truss bridge, date stamped 1904. And as we could tell as well, this was a double line that came through here. Whether it was a double main line or a siding or a spur, regardless, two lines did operate through this bridge at one time. The only thing that's left behind now are some heavily rotted ties. Even the walking planks on this side are in really deplorable condition. I wouldn't even attempt to walk on them. They do have a barrier here, of course. They don't want any vehicles or even people probably going across it. I'm not going to attempt to, just because it is in really poor condition. I don't want to walk on an active line, and walking over here would be questionable. So not worth the risk to me, but it is a cool location. You could see, you know, just the wall of steel on both sides. Something else fun to imagine is two trains coming through here at once in opposite directions. That'd be quite the sight to see, but it'd also make a whole heck of a lot of noise. These bridges do rattle and rumble, and definitely you could tell when a train is going over a bridge like this. But I thought it was neat to share. Stop and check out, get some pictures, which you'll see at the end in the photo montage. But we're going to go back where we came from, over on the New York, Ontario, and Western, and continue down the line. I do have a favor to ask too. If you are enjoying this adventure so far and are looking forward to me crossing that old Coal Mine Colliery Lokie Bridge, give this video a thumbs up. That is still to come. Stopped here to show you a few different things. So straight ahead you can see the crossing gates for Delaware-Lackawanna, but you can't really see much of a rail bed here, right? That's because it went overhead. Here is a bridge abutment, still intact, made out of stone. It's a decent sized one. So the tracks would have went directly overhead over this road, which was probably in use back in the day, and would have continued on that side where there is, let's see if there is any abutment left over here. It is elevated though over here, so it definitely went across. Yeah, there's a little bit of stone left here, not like the other side though, but the rail line basically came out. I came out right there by the fence, so it gradually went uphill to come over and continue on, and I believe it would have continued elevated because I think we're going to come across another abutment near our next location, which I do remember seeing. So there are a few of these abutments here along this line, just showing signs of the past. We're further down the line now. The abutment I was just showing you is roughly 100 yards down that direction, and it's following the line again. And again, as mentioned, it does elevate again. Now it goes up pretty steep here, much more steeper than it would in real time. Landscape has transformed, but I believe this is the backside of another abutment, and we're going to confirm that in just a second. I figure I'd show you what I'm seeing, and we'll see if it correlates with what is actually here. Yep, exactly what I thought. So we do have another abutment on that side, as well as on this side. And this is the one we were just on the back side of. So they went to the effort and extent of removing the rails, the ties, looks like even probably the ballast, all the spikes, everything related to the railroad tracks except the bridge abutments, including the supports that would have went across, whether they were wooden or steel. But everything's left, I'm just going to say everything's gone except the stone blocks for those bridge abutments. The thing I mentioned numerous times in the past is that people drive by things like these old abutments, abandoned railroad tracks, and other things, even walking along these heritage trails, seeing telegraph poles, foundations. They probably have no idea what it was for or that it even exists. It probably just blends into them, but to me, it stands out like a sore thumb. Something that seems unnatural, man-made, and especially when you have confirmation that it's an old rail line, these things really stand out to me and mean a little bit more to me than the average person. I'm basically retracing my steps from when I did my review video. I really didn't have intention in following the line this far, but it just kind of coincides with where we're going and the way we're getting there. So as you can see, another abutment behind me and another one right there across the street. This one is much higher. I would say from road surface to the top of that, probably 12 to 15 feet. It's a decent height. But where we're going is up here to the stop sign. We're gonna make a right, cross over the river, and if I'm not mistaken, there is not only more abutments over there, there's also a new section of trail. And that trail is going to lead us to the Colliery Lokie Bridge and Conveyor Bridge as well. There's two bridges there, one of which I think we could pass or cross over. So I'm going to make my way over there now. When we get to the next abutment, I'll show you that, and then we'll get a glimpse of the new trail on our way to those bridges. So here's the new section of trail. This is where I came to wrap up my video of my review of this bike. And this is a great spot because this allows us to see both sides of another abutment. I was down below in front of that, which I'm going to show you in just a moment. This is the back side of it here. Obviously it's excavated away. It would have been elevated and went right down that way, but they obviously transformed this to make this rail trail. This is known as the Parker Street Landing Canoe and Kayak Launch, at least right down here, which we're going to go down there now and take a look at that. For those of you who watched my review video, this area may look familiar. I finished my video right here, giving my final thoughts. But down here is a beautiful area. It's basically river's edge. And they do have some stones here, which do form a circle here. I guess maybe if the water is lower, it kind of makes a pooling area or calming area for when you're loading, unloading your kayak or canoe. That's just speculation. I don't really know for sure. The water's looking nice and crisp and clear though. And that's the bridge we just crossed over. But the reason we're down here is, again, is to show you the other side of this abutment. So if we were to imagine New York, Ontario, and Western would have came from that direction and would have crossed over the abutments over there and probably at a curve, I'm guessing, came over here. And this is one of the last abutments in this area as far as I'm aware of. This one's a pretty good size. It does have this concrete block in front of it, so I don't know what that was for or why they would have position that there, other than the only thing I could imagine is to prevent erosion when the river levels came high, so it didn't erode away the stone. That's my only guess. If you guys happen to know otherwise, feel free to share down below. Climbing up to the back side of it now, which I showed you when we rode in here. You could, yeah, I guess we'll do that. We'll climb up on top of it here. I just scared a bird, which scared me. It's basically a wall right now, but again, back in the day, this would have been full of material because the rail bed would have came across. Oh yeah, quite a nice view up here. Now we get a better sense of where the line came from over there. And there's looking down where we just were. The M20's down there. So while I'm at this spot, I'm going to snap a few photos. Just snoop around, make sure I'm not missing anything worth showing. And then we're going to continue on the new trail to show you what it's like and where it goes, because it does take us to, as mentioned, which most of you are probably waiting for, the colliery bridges. One of which was a conveyor bridge that actually came from underground, taking coal out of the mine. And the other was a Old Lokie Bridge, which pulled mine carts, coal carts, out of the mine and would have taken them to the colliery. I do have some pictures of the colliery, some information relating to the dates it operated, and kind of showing you what it used to look like and what it looks like now. So we're going to spend a good amount of time there, not only exploring it, but learning more about it. So stay tuned for that. This is a new section of trail. Construction on this began in early 2021, and I believe it was finished, completed the end of 2021, around November. So it's a relatively new section. It's 1 mile long, 12 feet across, completely paved, and it takes you through an area where colliery used to be. Prior to them creating this, it did look drastically different, but there are still signs of what used to be here. Now I'm going to show you up here on the right. We're going to take a little detour. And up here is signs from the past. These are old mining ruins, basically from the colliery days. These are big silt and coal piles, and it's almost like a wasteland. I stopped here to show you this set of train tracks, and they do have some importance to them. Now this is, I believe, a spur line. It dead ends at the mound of material down there just to the front and left of those trailers. So it's not a through line, not a main line, but it did come here, or does come here, to service this piece of land. But the reason it's important is because back in the day, there was a lot of tracks here. This was a former Delaware Hudson rail yard and or holding yard. I'm going to show you some images on the screen, one of which shows you all the lines that were here, which was a lot of them, but they all stopped here. They didn't continue on. And then I'm going to transform to modern day, showing you where the lines used to be, how the land looks now, and only one set of tracks, which I believe is owned or operated by Delaware Lackawanna, if I'm not mistaken. But this was a Delaware Hudson rail yard or holding yard. And you can see here, this looks like a fun little place here. Obviously, people on ATVs, dirt bikes come here. There is some operating equipment up there as we speak, so I'm not going to go over there. But I do think while we're here, and I'm on the M20, that we could have just a little bit of fun riding around here. What do you think? Well, I have to say that was a heck of a lot of fun. I knew I kept this bike for a reason. All right, so what we're gonna do right now, we're gonna follow this out. I'm gonna show you the entire route to where it dead ends. We're then gonna turn around and stop and explore the Colliery Conveyor Bridge and Lokie Bridge. So while we make our way through, enjoy the sights and the music. This is where it ends and may continue in the future somewhere around here. This is basically Blakely Troop area. And it's a 1 mile section, completely paved, and is a nice place to walk or ride. But now we're going to return back to those bridges and learn more about them and hopefully cross over them. All right, welcome back. I know many of you have been waiting for this point, so it's finally here. So before we attempt to do anything, let's talk a little bit about what we're looking at. So there are essentially two bridges here. This is more the traditional sense of the word bridge. That one, not so much. And what I learned from numerous resources, including some friends, is this was part of a conveyor system for what was known as the Marvine Colliery. The conveyor line went to the number 1 shaft, which is now in a parking lot on the other side. So the conveyor system went underground in the number 1 shaft. They loaded it up with the coal. It came on the conveyor belt and went across and would have been brought to the breaker colliery area, but specifically the breaker back here in the background, which is now the site of the recycling center. So essentially what we're looking at, all these coal piles and silt piles where I was playing around, riding around the bike, was part of the operations of the colliery, specifically the Marvine Colliery. But the breaker itself was located off in that direction, close proximity to where the recycling center is today. I want to show you a couple of pictures that I took when I actually discovered these for the first time about a month ago. When I did my bike review, I did follow this trail just to see where it went. Stumbled upon these, I'm like, holy crap, how did I not know about these? I knew I had to return and to bring you along as well. But those pictures I took were before all the foliage grew in. You got a better sense as to what these looked like and what I saw back when I first discovered them. Today, it's significantly grown in. Harder to see, but once we're released up on the bridge itself, we should have some clarity and get some better views. Now this one here, which we're going to be focusing more attention on, is what is known as the Lokie Bridge. That's what my friend Chris called it. And this allowed loaded coal cars to come out of the mines and to cross over, and they would have been pulled by a Lokie, which is typically a mine locomotive or an electric locomotive. And again, would have went in the direction of the breaker over there. But this had 30-inch gauge rail on it, and it operated like a traditional train bridge, except that it was specifically for the Marvine Colliery, for the mine, and would have brought coal cars in and out of the mine, where that was just a conveyor system which would have been loaded underground. This brought loaded coal cars out from underground and taking them over to the breaker. Looking at it here, it is holding up quite well. It is made of primarily steel. There is a concrete deck on it. I don't know if the rails are still up there. We will find that out. But they were left here as a sign of the past, because the Marvine Colliery, which we're going to talk more about once we're up there, has some significance to it. It wasn't just an ordinary breaker or colliery. It actually had some importance in its operations and its duration as well. But everything is primarily gone except for these. Now on the other side, it basically just is a parking lot now. They don't go anywhere. If we are able to cross, we'll get a visual of that, but there's nothing over there now. But the mines themselves were underground on the other side in the direction of these two bridges. So what do you guys think? Are you ready to climb up here and cross over, get some views, and explore the Marvine Colliery Lokie Bridge? Well, I'm ready, whether you are or not. So I'm gonna head up there. If you want to go, just come behind me. You can literally see where they basically cut off the beams and the decking. Oh, I'm actually noticing there is some rail right here. That's narrow gauge rail. So that might have been one of the original tracks. We'll see if they're still up there or not. Either that or this was support for concrete, this is another rail right here. So we've seen that time and time again where they use rail as almost like rebar for support for the concrete. So narrow gauge rail confirmed, 30-inch gauge, my friend Chris said. But this looks like it may be one of the rails that the coal cars rolled on. But we'll find that out in just a moment. A little jinky getting up here. Gotta stand on a small pallet. I gotta go through this pipe here. Stock. There we go. Oh yeah. Boy, this is really neat. You don't want to look at me. Let's check it out. So here's a view looking towards where the breaker would have been, where this bridge and line would have continued to, off in that direction. But past this coal mine silt, we do have a concrete deck, as I explained, but the rails are still here. They are filled in. So there is a strip of concrete right here where the gap would have been for the flange of the wheels. So I don't know, maybe they just did that to make it safer so people don't trip on it. I don't know. But regardless, these are the rails. The same one that I saw sticking out of the end are the ones here that are basically embedded in the concrete. I don't know if it was a concrete deck the entire time it was in operation. It may have been altered afterwards. But regardless, the rails are still here, 30-inch gauge, narrow rail. This bridge is kind of interesting. It's a combination of almost like truss and girder. Since there's nothing overhead though, I think it's closer to girder. Tell you what though, gives you some great views up here. Goes directly over the river And over there is the line we talked about earlier, the now Delaware Lackawanna, formerly Delaware Hudson. There are some areas where the decking is exposed and you could literally fall right through, so I'm gonna avoid those. It is tagged up, which is to be expected. And right here will give us a view at the conveyor bridge. Obstructed view, nature's reclaiming. Not very wide, I would say end to end, probably close to 10 feet, right around there. The rails are still here, but they are buried or covered in some spots. So it doesn't look truly authentic to when it was in operation, but I think it's pretty close. Even got a tree growing up here from another tree. Now here you could pretty much fall right out. There were some railings. Yeah, it's completely open here. I'd say it's a pretty decent spot to catch the DL coming through. All right, here's a better view of the conveyor. Well, people definitely have been up there. I don't know if we'll get up there or not. We'll see if it is possible. Now they do have fences, but as you can see, they're not really serving their purpose. People have made holes. It's not posted. That's the only reason I came up here. If it was posted, I wouldn't be here. So as we come through, old meets new. So there is a parking lot here. This may even be a car lot if I'm not mistaken. And let's see if we can see anything else back here. So there is some more steel, some concrete over there, steel here. So would have continued further. Curiosity got to me. This is where it officially terminates, right here. And where, like I said, old meets new. Just a brief look here at the conveyor bridge. It had a corrugated metal roof, like the tin metal, concrete decking there, and underneath looks like it's just structural support. Although there is a pipe underneath that looks like it may be wrapped in insulation or maybe even asbestos that goes underneath this, the decking. So no rails up here, would have been a conveyor system. And I can only imagine what this land used to look like. Now I believe, not 100% certain, but I think the building in front of this garage is an original building from back when the colliery was in operation. I think I remember seeing that on the old maps or the old images. So the building in front of this one with the big garage doors, I think is original. Probably been repurposed, you know, renovated, but I think it's still an original building. Actually, it is. I just got confirmation of that right now. I'm gonna crop it in, or I'll take a still photo. If you look on the roof line of this building closest to us, there's vents there. Those are the same vents I've seen at other mine buildings known as the shifting shanty, where the miners would go in there to change shift, for their shift change I should say, to change their clothing, get their gear. But I'm about 99% certain that's an original building from the colliery days. The vents are on top. Good chance that was the shifting shanty. Found a nice shady spot here. Now, for those of you that are enjoying this video and want to continue watching, this is not going to be the final item that I had to show. A little bit further down, when we made our way down this trail, when I had the music playing, I did notice a couple things off in the sides. Possibly rail related, possibly not, but something man-made. So I'm going to check those out after we finish up here. But right now, I do want to share a bit of information I do have regarding the Marvine Colliery. I found a few articles. One states Marvine Colliery, breaker number 2, West Side Boulevard Avenue, between East Parker Street and Route 380, Scranton, Lackawanna County. I'm also going to link this down below if you want to read it for yourself. It says the significance of the Marvine Colliery is important to local history for its relationship to the development of anthracite mining industry in northeast Pennsylvania, the anthracite capital of the world between 1890 and 1930. Breaker number 2 was important to operations of the Marvine Colliery and the Delaware and Hudson Coal Company, for it represented one of the first efforts of that company to build and operate a modern coal preparation facility heavily dependent upon electrical power. Marvine Breaker number 2 is one of the first breakers in Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania, to install and operate chance cones for the separation of coal from rock matter. And it says building structure dates 1920, initial construction. And that's what this one article says. Now I do have another article, not really an article, but a website that has dates of operation. Not necessarily for the breaker itself, but maybe for the mine. Starting out in 1872 is the opening of the shaft, and it says type colliery, operation name Marvine, 1872. It pretty much remained the same up until, looks like around 1930s to 40s, where it went from colliery to bank to breaker to mine. It had numerous different types there, but still operated under the name Marvine all the way up until 1970, nearly a 100-year operation. Now these are, again, just what I'm finding off websites, and if you happen to know any further details, you're welcome to share them down below. Alright, so it says here Delaware and Hudson Company inside, Hudson Coal Company outside. So it's a combination of Delaware and Hudson, Hudson Coal, Marvine Colliery. I guess they all had ties to each other. I think we did our due diligence of documenting and exploring this area, specifically these bridges. We got to explore it from both the ground and the sky with the help of Jayhawk, and the conveyor bridge mostly from the sky, but we at least got to see it from this bridge. I'm really happy though they left these behind, because it is a sign of the past. The historical value that took place here and what it means to what took place here is significant, especially knowing that Marvine Colliery breaker site had an important role with the creation and first use of that cone separator with the rock and coal, and the long duration, nearly 100 years. So pretty remarkable. I can only imagine what this place was like back in the day when it was in operation. It would have been bustling with activity, with coal cars coming across here, loaded conveyors of coal, the breaker site, the sounds, the sights, people, equipment. And the only thing that's really left now is those big cone piles. And if they ever remove those, this site's going to be almost unrecognizable. But thankfully, there are people and websites and photos from when this existed to educate generations to come as to what took place here. Now people know it as a walking biking trail, but going back over 50 years, it was a completely different story. With that being said though, I know this is, actually I don't even know how long this video is. It's probably a longer video, I'm guessing. But since we're here, I did spot things further down the trail. A couple things off both sides of the trail in the woods a little bit. And since we're here, I'm curious to find out what they are and to see if they have any relation to this. They may not, but there's only one way to find out. As promised, there are some things here which looks like they may have just been moved here upon the work being done for this trail. That's just my first glance. Concrete block here looks like it may have held a, yeah, it's just laying there. Most likely held a pipe. Now there's a pipe here, a couple rails inside of it. Those look like standard gauge rail. Turnbuckle there. It's unfortunate I'm coming here now, because if I was here prior to the work being done on the trail, I think a lot more would be visible and in its original place. But at least there's still something here. Now this, let's see if we can make out what that is. It looks like a support for a bridge, like a really small bridge. Not sure. Just a concrete piece laying here, which may or may not be connected to that. This is toppled over. At first I thought it was a bump stop for a train. It's too small, and upon closer inspection it's definitely not, but it almost looks like a mini support for like a small mine cart trestle or something. If that is roughly 30-inch gauge spacing, possibly. But if you could identify what it is, feel free to let me know as well. But I did spot more on the other side over there, so let's head there next. It's a nice shiny sign. Up here is a fence, but I think there's maybe a couple things hiding up here. And let's hope there's no snakes here. I don't like this high vegetation. There's a pipe, yeah, coming up from underground. Concrete block here. This pipe looks like it comes up and in. I don't know if that's how it originally was. Kind of looks bent and beat up. There's another pipe here. I wonder if this was something connected underground to the mines. Maybe ventilation or monitoring. And right here is a hunting glove on top of a little post. Leave that how we found it. Oh, there's actually numerous ones. They're in a row here. Something was connected to these steel arms. There's two holes. They're anchored in concrete. And they go right in a row towards where the breaker would have been, just up there. On their own, by themselves, it's not really anything important or significant. But to me, it's another piece to the puzzle, which helps tell a larger story. Seems like a rather odd place for a fence. I mean, there's a little bit of a drop off here, but I don't think that'd be the reason why. Now the train bridge is tagged up. I know people have crossed it. I'm not going to, because it is rarely used, but still used, still owned, I believe, by Delaware Lackawanna. And my luck, I'd cross it, and it'd be one of the few times we're bringing something down on a spur switch, because it is a crossing here. It says there's no crossing gates or bells, but it is still a crossing, so semi-frequently trains do utilize this line, even though it's just a dead-end spur. But it's a nice area here. The water looks semi-deep, a few feet at least. Nice little beach underneath the bridge over there. And the fence pretty much just starts and stops right here. Goodbye. Was that a really fun adventure or what? Pretty much exceeded my expectations. I knew there were things to see, but I didn't think there was as much as we found today. And if it wasn't for this review of this bike coming to this area, we wouldn't have had this video to make. I probably would have discovered this stuff at some point, but it wasn't soon enough. I wish I found it before this trail was here, before things got altered, but regardless, there's still a lot to see. We got confirmation of old rail lines, confirmation of uses of those bridges, and just learn a lot about this area, the importance of railroad history in Pennsylvania, and the significance of the Marvine Colliery breaker site. This was such a fun day. We put on almost 9 miles today, put on a few thousand steps on foot, got a nice tan on the arms, and I'm hungry. So I'm gonna be heading back to my starting point. I have probably about a 15-minute ride, but I want to hear your feedback. If you have any knowledge on the things you saw in this video, by all means, please share it down below. And even if you don't have knowledge, if you just enjoyed what you saw today, tell me what you saw that you did enjoy, or what you enjoyed about it, or what stood out to you the most. For me, the highlight was definitely those bridges, but even more so, just the overall adventure, learning more history, documenting more of this area, and things that have been in my neck of the woods for nearly my entire life, it just goes to show that there's so much out there that's still yet to be discovered. And I'm doing my best to document it one video at a time. If you did make it this far, thank you so very much for doing so. I pretty much never know how long these videos are going to be, especially when you keep finding more and more stuff, or things end up tying you up longer at locations. So regardless of how long the video is, I do my best to kind of keep it flowing and to make sure that you have something to look forward to as the video progresses. Anyways, guys, would love to have you give a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and check my playlist down below, because down there you'll be able to see the different variety of content I do, such as railroad ruins, mining ruins, exploring in the woods, Google Maps finds, abandoned, all sorts of things I do that you may enjoy as well on top of this video. So anyways, guys, thank you once again for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video. Are you still here? Well, what are you doing here? The video's over. I gotta make my way back, but you're probably already home. So if you want to watch something else, click on another one of my videos.